Delicious sourdough bread that you can make at home using your sourdough starter, flour, and filtered water. There are many recipes out there on how to make your own starter. I made mine about 2 years ago and I still use it today. This recipe will require 100 grams of your sourdough starter yeast. Pour it into a bowl and then add 300 grams of unbleached all-purpose flour. And then we add our 300 milliliters of warm filtered water. And we add filtered water because you don't want the chlorine or the chemicals in the water to interfere with the yeast. And then throw in half a teaspoon of fine sea salt. And then we stir it and give it a good stir, a vigorous stir, because you want to get as much air into the dough as possible. What we've made here is called a sponge. I've got my oven light on, which is warming up my oven. I'm going to just cover it with a plastic wrap and put it in the oven for at least 3 to 4 hours until it doubles the size and becomes all nice and bubbly. And now I'm going to be feeding my starter yeast, and that's just replacing the 100 grams that I've removed from my recipe. So I've replaced it with 50 milliliters of water and 50 grams of flour. And then you give that a really good stir. You put the lid on, but don't close it tightly, as it will need to sit for a couple of hours so it can ferment before I put it back into the fridge. And what we have here are called bannetons. I prepare them with the flour. This will help prevent the dough from sticking. In one of my earlier videos, I show you how to shape your bread in case you don't have bannetons. My sourdough starter has doubled in size. It's been fermenting for about 2 hours. I'm going to seal it up and put it back into the fridge for next week's use. And after 3 hours, my sponge is now ready. I'm going to add 300 grams of flour to it with 2 teaspoons of fine sea salt. And I've put an extra 15 grams of flour off to the side in case I need to add a little bit more. Now, the first step in this bread making process was to make the sponge. Now, step 2, to the sponge, we're going to add the flour and the salt, and this will make a dough that will also need to rise another 3 to 4 hours in your warm area. So once you stir it all around and a ball forms, it's time to knead. Drop the dough onto your work surface. Now, the kneading method that I use here is called the slap and fold method. And this is just a way of kneading your dough to get the most amount of air into the dough. It did take me a little bit of practice to get this method right. And I'm going to add a little bit of flour to it as it's feeling a little bit sticky. And I'd like to take this time to ask you for your support. If you're interested in this recipe and would like to see more, please press on the subscribe button down below. So for the slap and fold method, you're taking the dough that's furthest away from you, slapping it down, and then rotating it, and then repeating this process over and over again until you have a nice smooth dough. Let me tell you, you get a pretty good workout doing this. And a great opportunity to get all your frustrations out. And here we go, nice and smooth. Make it into a ball, put it into a lightly oiled bowl, cover it with your saran wrap, and back in the warm oven it goes. After 3 to 4 hours, or when it's doubled in size, it's ready to deflate. And what we're going to do is we're going to split this dough into 2. You can make one large loaf with it if you like, but I've got my 2 smaller sized bannetons that I want to use. So once you've split the dough, you're going to just shape it, just give it a nice little tucking under and place it into your banneton face down, but you want to flour it first. This will help prevent it from sticking. And then I placed my covers on them And back into the oven they go for the last 1 to 2 hours of proofing. Now I've got my baking stone in the oven at 425 preheating. I turn the loaves onto the hot pan and then I score them. You don't need a baking stone. You can use any type of pan to cook your bread on. And into the hot oven they go for approximately 35 to 40 minutes until they're golden brown. And here you go. I've got a beautiful crunchy crust. Listen to this. Beautifully risen, fluffy, and light. Doesn't this look delicious? Go to ginasbellacucina.blogspot.com for more details about this recipe and access to more of my recipes. Ciao, ciao.